Okay, well, thanks y'all for joining. I'm gonna just kind of introduce us, myself first. My name's Edan Eckstein, and I've been in the education space since 2003 and in the Epic space since 2008. I'm on the Readiness and Education team here at Bluetree, and I'm so excited to have three thought leaders share their point of view today. But first, Bluetree has done a lot of different things in the past to encourage conversation and information sharing in our industry. As we continue to work in the digital learning transformation space and expand our services, we're excited to hear from you all about your experiences and perspectives. Sue Ports is currently the training director at a healthcare organization, and she has her master's degree in education and has been in the training space for 15 years and has been in the Epic space for more than 5 years. Sue, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I'm a dance mom.
Perfect. That's a TV show. I'm a kitty mom, different, or kitty dad, I guess. Great. Let me introduce the other thought leaders here. Blair Skinner is on the Readiness and Education team here at Bluetree and is acting training manager at Atlantic Health. She's been in the Epic space since 2007 when she completed her master's degree at UW-Madison. Incidentally, Blair may have more Epic certs than anyone I know. She has 31. 31!
You know, a lot of those are the curriculum certifications, in addition to the admin certifications, but still, it's a lot. Lots of time.
So, third is Janet Zerkor, and she's the training director at NYU Langone. She has led the Medical Center's training team since 2013 and has a master's degree in education. She's been in the Epic training space for more than 10 years, and I know her well, so I can say this. She's been in the training space since the last century.
True.
So Janet, I'm going to start with you and see how did your organization do in response to moving training out of the classroom in response to the pandemic?
So it was, as you can imagine, pretty dramatic because New York just shut down and sent everybody home. So we didn't really have much of a choice. So we did it from a Friday to a Monday. I think the staff, they have shown great resiliency. I think you have to in New York City with everything that goes on there, but it was quite incredible. We just immediately picked up on the ones who had that core experience in using WebEx training tools and all the other tools out there, and they just took the lead to educate the rest of the team on the fly. And we quickly are really truly tech savvy nerd card holding people immediately became producers for all of the sessions so that we could get a session running really well for our doctors and nurses very quickly because we were upstaffing hundreds of people. So there was a lot of technical issues, but every day we just seemed to really get better and gain momentum in getting all the tech errors sort of swept up, figuring out the best way to get in front of them so that they had all the tools before they logged in. And then we, dropped our cases dramatically and people having login issues, which of course allows us just to jump in right and start training, which is what we really needed to do in response to what was happening in New York City. So I am incredibly proud of them all the time. Like I already am all the time. I'm like mother hen, but like this was really a true test of their resiliency and their strength in this area of tech training, and they just did really well.
Awesome. And I'm going to come back to you about those opportunities that you had. I'm interested. And I see the cat in the background, so I'm going to wave.
Yeah, there's Barbarina.
How about you, Blair?
So Atlantic's located in New Jersey. So we were moved into a similar shutdown to New York City. And we also, you found out on a Friday that you were switching to virtual, and Monday we at least got Thursday afternoon. So we had an extra night to figure it out. But it was a radical change. We had no online training. Everything was in person in the classroom. And we decided, we got the final decision that Thursday that orientation and Epic training were both going to have to switch and go virtual. We were lucky to have a very strong partnership between our HR and onboarding folks, our access management team, our customer support center, and ISS training, plus our communications team, to figure out, how do we do this? Because you have to think about things like, normally when people come in person for orientation, they get their ID and password. How do we get them their ID and password if they're not coming into us in person? You can't send it in the same email. How do you get that to them? We knew, and as I'm sure everyone else experienced, and not everyone has the same setup at home. They don't all have a computer. Some folks are going to be on an iPad or a Chromebook. One of our challenges, and I'm sure everyone has a challenge, is the vast mix of devices with, that people are joining these meetings with, and being able to troubleshoot for that. So we worked really closely with our partners and reconfigured the orientation packet, planned the communications that went out to the whole organization, as well as to all the staffing agencies that we work with. That would be a change for them as well. We made a public-facing site where we stored our virtual EPIC training guide and our how to join a Skype for Business meeting, which then turned into a how to join the Teams meeting document. Things that, we're just like, oh, hey, wait a minute, what about this? What about that in these meetings? But I think one of our biggest wins for that was getting our customer support center engaged and reviewing all of the documentation we were putting out, so they could say, no one's going to understand that, or we know we're going to get calls on this, you should word it like that. So it was a really, really good partnership. Our team did amazing through it. We had some folks actually who came from NYU that you probably know, Janet, who were really interested in online learning techniques and mentored the other folks very quickly in how to be engaging online, how to use the polls, the Q&A, that kind of stuff. Just made, a set of intro slides that everyone could use, so that we're kind of offering the same experience and getting the trainers comfortable with it. So it was a rapid conversion, and we learned as we went along.
So I'm hearing it was rapid from both of you. I think we all laughed at the tip sheet for the how to join a WebEx, right? Like, we can all relate to a tip sheet for a tip sheet. Like, how do you now join Teams? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Sue, what about your experience?
So ours was similar, but a little bit different. The customer I'm working with does not have a full rollout yet. So their first wave had completed in January, and we were preparing for the next wave. We're in different states, and so the first state actually shut down before New York did. So that gave us a little bit of a unique challenge where we didn't have PTs available to pivot. So we did a two-phased approach where the first wave that was already live, we gave them the post-live checklists as kind of a stopgap. So the expectation was that their leader would assign a preceptor, and that preceptor would run through that checklist with them to make sure that they were competent in what they were being asked to do. And then once the leader agreed that they were competent, then they would then send an email to the LMS admins to sign them off on training. So it puts a lot more of it into the hands of the operations. And then our second phase of that was for our PTs to then record key components of those classes and then use that in conjunction with the checklists. And that has more to do with we also lost the majority of our CTs after the implementation. So we were already down quite a few on top of that. So just a little bit different perspective on how we attacked it that were unique to this operation. One thing I can say is that the central billing office did go to virtual training immediately and really likes it. So they were able to continue that and didn't actually have to just go to checklists.
So I'm going to have you continue, just because you kind of mentioned some opportunities that you experienced. So what lessons did you learn, and what opportunities came out of that?
Yeah, so I think one of the lessons we learned is that those checklists that come from Epic are a great starter set. They're probably not everything you need, though, and they're not, unique to your organization. So in the flurry, I think we didn't do our best job of ensuring that it reflected all of our workflows, and maybe they were a little bit too close to foundation where we maybe had some gaps. I know we've since gone back and revised some of those. Some of the others were just that, when you're going through that implementation, make sure you have those CTs in the long run. I joined this project in the end of the go live, so that wasn't something I could really change mid-flight, but it's definitely something that we have learned from and are still trying to ramp back up. I think the other thing is making sure that people are comfortable in WebEx. I think even you know, our PTs, our principal trainers, are more comfortable teaching in the classroom. So when they have to pivot and teach using WebEx, it's not easy for everyone. And I think if I could offer anything to Epic, it's you know, or even just our community of Epic folks, it's make sure that people are able to teach in multiple modalities.
Yeah, and Blair's tip sheets may help on that.
Yes. It's all those certs.
Right.
Yeah, I have a whole policy and procedure on how to do virtual training. Invitation templates, you know, when do you send the invitation? What do you attach to it? Like all that stuff we standardize so that every person getting the invitation would have a similar experience and similar resources for joining.
Mm-hmm.
What other lessons did you learn? This for you, Blair.
Oh, for me, platform. We're struggling with our platform for virtual training. I started at Atlantic in February, and I was brought in before we knew that COVID was going to be a thing. I was brought in as a consultant to help with things like assessing how do we want to go from instructor-led into a slow transition into a blended learning approach into virtual training. And part of that was going to be platform selection, the selection of other tools. How do we structure the team to support that? You know, what do we need to go from good to great, from all instructor-led into a more modern training approach with self-service option. And then, you know, I was there for like 3 weeks on site and then never traveled again because of COVID. So it was a transition for everybody and a complete pivot of what I did. I ended up basically, I'm the acting training manager. I'm running things with a team, trying to keep things moving with COVID and with everything we're doing. And one of our big struggles, because we never got to we had to put a hold on, you know, selecting a new platform and going through that process. We were training out of Skype for Business until Skype for Business, you know, if any of you were using it, it had so many people using it that you had such audio and visual delays that it was just not feasible. So then we switched to Teams because we have a big organizational push to use Teams. Teams is very resource intensive. So if you are on a not great internet connection or you aren't on a device where you have it installed, it can be a challenge. So we're doing troubleshooting there as well. We're now piloting Zoom as an option. We're kind of running through the platforms that were already available or are available at Atlantic before we look outside, just to see if we can roll out something that figure out something that we already have might be a possible solution. We use Zoom for telehealth, and my hope is because we're successful using it for telehealth, and on the other end of telehealth are people with a variety of devices and skill sets when it comes to using a tool, that might be a good option for us as well. So more to come on that, but the Zoom investigation is our next step. Yeah, that's been a big lesson learned for us, is that platform is so important, and you know, you just don't want that distraction of the system, the tool you're using, taking away from your ability to do what you know your folks are really good at doing, but might be struggling with because someone can't join audio or can't see the screen.
So I'm interested, Janet, if you want to add to that, just because I think you'll probably have a platform that's worked for you, and then also answer the same question. But I know Janet and I've talked about this, and also how your LMS plays into this might be interesting.
Well, I mean, that was the problem. It didn't play in as well as we thought it would, because so just to give you some background, I started off at NYU as a CT, so we've always been, for the last 10 years, heavily rooted in we have 200 classes in our catalog that are, the 95% of them are in person or were in person up to this. So we really had a big question about whether or not we could do this. And I think what we learned is that we can do this, but it requires a lot of investigation and education. You know, my big thing was that a presenter in person is not the same as a presenter online. They are two very different things, and you have to accommodate and close that gap a little bit. So once all of the sort of chaos died down a little bit here, and we were able to get back into the swing of training in normal class, so the expected number of attendees, we really started to look at our tools. Like our LMS allows mass class upload. Well, that's great, but its WebEx quote unquote tool didn't hold up to actual WebEx. So it would drop all the connections, like people couldn't get in with the link. It didn't have audio over the computer, or it only had audio over their computer or device. It didn't have a dial-in number, which is like causing a lot of problems. There's another kitty cat. So we struggled a little bit with that and just ended up going back to WebEx training tools, which is really robust. It has all the same functionality as Zoom, not as flashy as Zoom. I do like some of the Zoom has a better, camera setup and stuff like that, but like it does have the breakout rooms, the whiteboards, the things. But then, what the next occurrence is that, well, no one's really used this. Like there's barely any licenses at NYU because it's just not used frequently. So what we had to do is we structured a master class for all, because we were having a daily huddle anyway with the team. We structured a master class that we've already done about 6.5 hours of education over since the middle of July, and it'll extend into the beginning of September, where we're going through videos and books and discussions about the different things that you need to be a engaging online educator to really get the most out of it. Because obviously we can do this, and we've proven it, much to our own chagrin, very quickly overnight, that it's possible to do this. It's possible to educate hundreds of people without a room in Manhattan. So like now we have to figure out, what we need to do in order to, make it really work. I think that we did very well under the circumstances, but there's a lot of growth, and the team's very excited for that, because most of them have been educators for at least a decade. And so for them, it's a whole new re-education on how to be an educator. So it's really refreshing to learn how to, engage and use all of those activity buttons, and use the whiteboard to annotate, and use the breakout rooms, and, and all of that stuff. So we're having actually a lot of fun with it. I think we've used our blended approach, in the way that we had in-person prerequisite e-learnings and post-requisite e-learnings prior to this. And I think we're rethinking all of that and thinking about what's best for our students in this virtual platform. We're going to create videos and more e-learnings and post-requisites, and play things actually in the class, and things like that. So for us, it's just been shockingly exciting. A ray of light has come out of what was definitely a very hard time for New York City. So we're very pleased about that. But I'm shocked that there's as many good resources as there are, because the whole world's having to do this so quickly. And prior to that, it was sort of like, but there are actually really valuable virtual training resources out there available to help a team get, that sort of little nuanced stuff that they don't know, because in a classroom, it's so different. When they're bored, when they're ignoring you, when they love you, when you can see that they're on Facebook instead of an Epic. So learning all of those tricks has been really, really fun, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, and I think there's other distractions that come from working at home.
For sure.
I love it. I guess that leads us right into the next question, which is, how did what you do inform your training going forward? So based on what you just explained, Janet, what are you guys going to do going forward?
I mean, so I'm not really sure yet. No official decision's been made, but obviously New York City is still in a social distancing, mask wearing, time. We don't know how long that's going to go. It is not conducive to have people in classrooms next to each other right now. And our classes even if we halved the number of people coming into our classroom, we'd end up having to offer more classes. So it doesn't really make sense for our students to make them wait to get that Epic access. So I don't think that it's a wait and see kind of thing right now. Let's invest and get everybody, our virtual training, the best that it can possibly ever be, and just sort of roll. I mean, my team is very much about, I always say, this is actually something that Don said to me when we worked together. He goes, it is what it is until it isn't. And that's like our team motto. Like, you just roll with it. And then when it changes, we'll roll with the new thing. But you can't get upset about it. You just got to go. So I think, and we don't know. The other huge unknown is how people are going to feel in the next, say there's a vaccine or whatever, how they're going to feel about being around people after all this isolation. People may not want to come into a classroom, frankly. So right now, what we're focused on is like, here's what we have to do right now. So let's do it the best that we possibly can do it.
Makes sense. Blair?
Yeah, so we're kind of in a similar place of wait and see. We, like I said, when the pandemic hit, we were at the very, very beginning stages of starting a digital learning transformation, going through the instructor-led classes to figure out, what should be e-learning, what should be independent work with guides and checklists and, working with a preceptor, what should be in the classroom. We had all these plans and formation that got put on hold. And we honestly don't know if the organization will ever go back to in-person training. Now that we're doing virtual and there's that momentum for it, we've proven that we can do it. I don't know that there's much of an appetite to go back into the classroom. Maybe for some roles, maybe not for others. But we are kind of at a phase now where we need to start really adjusting our curriculum to this new virtual model. We are kind of in this limbo of how long is this going to last? Are we going to get back to our full overhaul? So we've been doing tweaks along the way, adjusting lessons to be better for a virtual scenario, rearranging classes so that, some of the exercises might be after class now. One of our areas, our ClinDoc team, did some amazing work. They completely redid their curriculum. There used to be 16 hours of nurse training. And obviously during COVID, when we needed to get nurses to the floor the next day after they were hired, that wasn't going to work. So we partnered with Nursing Informatics, amazing partnership and an amazing team here, where we took nursing training down to the core essentials, 3-hour session, and then a nursing informaticists followed up with them. And we have a list now of everyone who's still at Atlantic who went through that abbreviated program, and we're circling back with them to fill in the blanks. From that, our ClinDoc team rearranged the curriculum, broke it into 2 inpatient RN classes, one for people with Epic experience. They take a little assessment beforehand to make sure they do have it, and one for folks who don't have Epic experience. And I think they're 6 hours and 8 hours now, which includes the content, again, rearranged for virtual training, but with the ability to get folks through class in a day and onto the floor as soon as possible. And we worked so close with Nursing Informatics on that to make sure it's the right topics, the right content, the right approach, and that they knew what people were getting trained on, so that when they do their rounds, they are able to circle back with people on anything that they might have questions on. Our whole approach to nursing training has been impacted by going virtual and by COVID. But the rest of our applications, it's more of a slower change. And, all of our conversations with vendors, we were looking at, various virtual, online training platforms, but it's real hard to do an RFI to ask to buy an Adobe Connect in the middle of a pandemic. So that's why we're looking at the platforms that we already have in-house. We were also talking to some other vendors with in-app learning support and rapid content creation to support our planned development and transition. But, those are also, we're trying to keep the conversations moving, but it's a tough time to introduce a big project right now. So we're looking for what we can do to enable the team to do their best and give the people who come to our classes the best experience possible, but basically within our means right now, keeping in mind that this fall, we don't know what's going to happen this fall with possibly a second surge, mix it with influenza. It's definitely a challenging time. So we're trying to not boil the ocean, but make meaningful change where we can.
It's awesome. It's given me all these different ideas. Sue, I want to give you the opportunity to say how is what has happened informing your training strategy moving forward.
Yeah, so I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier, just especially around CTs, making sure that there is a post-live plan. I think that is kind of glossed over sometimes because leading up to go live is so big that assume everything will be fine once you go live. And so that's definitely the number one priority is understanding that commitment. And if you can't meet that commitment, then what is the backup plan so that you don't find yourself in a situation with no one to train? Obviously, remote credentialing would be one of the things that we are considering as well. We have a pretty large system to support. We're not going to be able to pull a PT to be able to stand up a class quickly. We can't do that with OneWave Live, let alone anymore. And so that's probably the next thing on the list. And then, again, like everyone has said, we don't know what's going to happen. We can't predict the future. And I personally feel like we need to be in a position that we could pivot because it's expensive to pause go lives. And we have to have solutions that allow us to completely move forward, supporting as best we can, but at the same time, installing Epic for everybody that needs it. I think there's enough data out there that shows that patients benefit the most from it when there is that collaboration across all these different health systems. And with COVID, people are sick in different places that maybe they're not from. And so even better reason to make sure that we can get these sites live so that we can provide that better care.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank all three of you for being part of this. It is so great to have you three thought leaders on this and talking about it. I want to ask, if you guys have an extra few minutes, I want to ask you one other question that I think if I were watching, I would want to know the answer to, that I should have warned you about, but I didn't, and I just thought about it who was talking. If you would have known what you know now, and you could go back and tell Sue of February, like one thing that another training leader would have wanted to know. I hope you guys don't mind I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I there's so many things that I would have told her, like go take the vacation because you won't get it later.
That's a good one.
Honestly, it's push hard for what you're passionate about, because there's a few times where I had a pretty good instinct about what we should do, but I had to sell it. And so sometimes when you're having to sell it, it's hard to push hard too. And I think being in the consulting space is hard. You're not the trusted employee all the time. And so having those conversations to gain trust from everybody is exhausting. And so that would be the one thing that I would probably say is don't back down and keep pushing, because eventually I ended up doing what I planned, but I probably wasted a month getting buy-in when I should have just pushed.
I would go back and tell myself those multiple boxes of family-sized Cheez-Its were not necessary despite your stress level. Fruit would have been better.
There's just FYI, there's a ton of Cheez-Its that are probably so moldy in my office in Manhattan because I bought them, for this year and I haven't been there. So.
Yeah, I feel like we did a lot of communication, but we needed to do more communication. Not necessarily just in the virtual training world, but in the here's something that is changing. Do we actually have everyone we need in this conversation? It was meeting after meeting after meeting, and you weren't thinking always, hey, were these guys on the meeting? There's 50 people were on the meeting. Was everyone who needed to be there? And we definitely learned that not everyone was on the meeting all the time. Just over communication with everybody is the key to getting through something like this. Even though your emails are going to go nuts, make sure that everybody knows what's going on and is moving in tandem. That kind of partnership is just so essential when these kind of things are flying.
Thanks, Blair. Janet?
I would just to piggyback off of what Sue said, pushing for what you're passionate about. I kept putting off teaching the majority of my staff how to create video, because I was in the process of turnkeying 4 people at a time, and I'd only gotten through the first 4 because everything else was a project that had to be, this upgrade and this thing and that thing and blah, blah, blah. And it just kept piling on top and pushing back this thing that I knew that we needed. And what ended up happening is we're going into the pandemic during the most chaotic time, and there's only 2 of us, including myself, who are expert level, 2 more that are quasi-expert level but need a lot of coaching, and then 3 more who knew enough to string them together, but then we had to really do a lot of hours of work on these videos. And we were using video to do a lot of the transitional classes, like you're an Epic user in this area and you need to go to this area, like you're desperately needed over here. Watch this 5-minute video to learn, to know, so you know the tools you need, kind of thing. And if we had an army of people that could have done that, we could have done even more. Not that what we did wasn't good enough. It was good enough, but it would have been even better. Like if I had just fought for, you know what, that PT can't do that today because they need to sit with me for 6 hours to learn Adobe Premiere. But everything just kept getting, that was a thing. It's my passion project, so it kind of got swept up, and put aside for so long. So, but it's an incredible skill in a time of emergency like this to get communication back to Blair, to get the right communication to the right people very quickly that they can watch in their own time. That's the thing I would have told myself in February. Get everybody in a room and be ready for this. Here it comes. Just learn it the best you can, and then you're going to be making enough videos that you're going to be an expert by July. Because they would have been.
Y'all, thank you so much for joining. This was really awesome. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. That was fun.
Thank you. Bye.